Good evening, everyone. Okay, so these would be the topics that would be covering today. In continuation, this is in continuation to what we have started with. We had started with the overview of PPM, and starting from there, we are slowly trying to get into the meat of the subject. This slide also helps you to understand how projects is configured, or how it talks with the other modules. So it was also one of the questions that Vipul, you just asked me about, is it not closely integrated, right? So this is how it actually talks, or this is where it communicates.
So is it a one directional like procurement?
Yes, that is correct. It's one direction because it's more or less the source or the feeder, and it's unlike where you have projects and manufacturing, right? Project manufacturing, that's a little different. So unlike in that case wherein we would also be talking back, that's a different one, because I know the area that you're trying to touch upon. In case you have a requirement in your project and you need to procure some kind of material, some kind of equipment that is needed, or some kind of additional ancillary or accessory that you would want to add. So in that case, you would want a request to be set up from projects and be gone across or back into the module, right? So that's, I guess that's what you're trying to understand, right? So that's a different one. It's more from the manufacturing side, project manufacturing, when those both are integrated. And that's a different feature that they're trying to bring in. So it's not up yet there. So procurement is integrated with projects. Then we have inventory. When we say inventory, it is post the transactions, the financial information or the information that affects, that has to go through. Now that is what actually matters, because when there is transaction and when there is the dollar figure that is involved, the dollar figure is what we want to capture. So that is what we get across from the cost management. Then the OTL, or the time and labor. So the timesheets that are being entered, the hours that the resources enter. So we want to capture those hours and get the amount across for those timings or for those hours. Then we have expenses, all the expense sheets, whatever are billed. Then we have the payables. I mean, payables, again, it becomes a major module, right, like the other one. So that is again integrated over the costing or with the project financial management. These are integrated. These become the source systems. All the ones that you see on the right side are the source systems which feed into project costing. And then on the other side, on the receiving side, with financial management as the source, we have fixed assets and receivables. These are the two main areas which, apart from GL. GL is where we get all the transactions that are performed in project financial management. We get the accounting transferred from the projects to GL, but apart from that, it is the fixed assets and the receivables module. They get.
David, sorry to interrupt you. I have a question here. But order management is not there, because order management also uses the projects, right?
Right. When you say order management,
because when I create an order, I can put the project information in the order on the sales order.
Correct. Right. That's the point here. As I said, it comes from the transaction. So it becomes a transaction, right? So currently we have all the inventory transactions configured, and anything that is coming from cost management. So if there is a transaction that is performed and that is integrated with cost management, then that transaction flows through. because cost management becomes your hub over there through which we get the transaction information into projects.
Okay.
So all the integrations created to that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So and the other one is the reports. The information comes out from projects, or we use that information for reporting. As in ledgers, there's the GL side of it. So this is for project financial management. And if you want to remember this in an easier way, it's something like this. When the financial information, wherever there is a financial information that is flowing through, those come in as transactions, and the rest look as commitments. For that is just the procurement. I'm sorry for the spelling. It's the procurement, which is the one that holds commitments or that creates commitments. Since it doesn't have the financial information or the financial transaction as such, that module just creates the commitments. All right. So the next one is the project execution management. So project execution management, as such, it feeds into project financial management. So all that is happening, the planning that is going on, whatever changes are done, that feeds into the project financial management. So it's more or less one piece of connectivity here. All right, now let's look at the overview of the function setup manager. So it's essentially an application. When I say function setup manager, it is an application. It's an application in Fusion, which actually helps us to configure the system. All the 4 or 5 phases that, if you remember, the ones that we had discussed: identification, planning, execution, maintenance, right? Maintenance and control. So all those 5 phases that we talk about, or the 4 phases in more generic, those are controlled from functional setup manager. So how do these phases actually fall in line with this application, or how does this application control them? When you say you want to implement something, you want to implement project execution management, or you want to implement reporting under the projects, with both the PPM and the PEM. When you want to implement that, or you want to add in some features, we use the offerings. So the offerings help you identify which of these is what you need. You said that you've already seen the Fusion application, right? Since you've already seen the Fusion application, you know that all the features here are available as opt-in features. So if there is a particular area that you would want to implement, like you don't want to have PEM, then we don't check that. Or if you just want the PEM and not the PFM, then you check only the PFM. So what this does is it enables, or it helps us to configure only those features that are related to that particular module. Even under the module, it helps us to configure, it helps us to see only those items or those features which are needed by us. We check those features and then we try to set them. So when I say set them up, it's more like setting the configuring those particular tasks to enable those tasks to be available for the working of the, or for the usage of the application. When you plan to use the application in a particular manner, maybe you need some features or you don't need some features. So basis on that, you check those features. Like if you say, I want to have the assets feature, I'm just giving you an example. So you would select that feature through which when you try to push the information from the project financial management into the asset side of it, you've enabled that option. So once this is done, then we have the other one, which is for implementation or the deployment. It also helps us do that. And then in case there is a feature that is needed at a later point in time, we enable that feature. We come back to the features options, the opt-in features options, and we do that stuff. So all in all, it's an application that helps us to configure these, or that takes us through these 5 features and helps us to use the application the way it is designed and configure it to our business need. So this is how the function setup manager works.
And this is common for every module, not project specific, right?
Correct. The function setup manager is available across. Like I said, it helps us to configure.
So in
financial
setup manager also we create an implementation project, right? To configure the modules or whatever we want. That project is also does fall under the category of a PPM, or it's I mean just somewhat related or completely different when we create an implementation project under FSM.
Right. So it's a project in itself, but it is not a project that is driven by the projects. I mean, the Oracle Fusion projects in a way, the PFM and PM. It's not derived or it's not driven by these two.
Okay.
That's an overall whatever we do, the planning that we do in using the regular Excel sheet or the projects, we use that to say that okay, we are done with this stage, or these are the sub level project planning that we do, right? The module level planning that we do. So all that is done here in PSF, the PSM, if you want to call it as PSM, or the setup manager. That level of planning is being done here, and that is controlled from here. You can assign the task to each individual named resource, and you allow them to work on that task. They get to proceed, and then they get to report completion on that. There is a tracker as well on that. The level up to which that they have configured, or percentage complete. So all that can be tracked there. So that's essentially a project, but that project is not driven by any of these 2 modules. Alright, so see, this is what it does. When you configure the system, when you configure this application, it helps us to, it gives us a list of all the tasks that we need to configure. Like I said, these tasks are the ones that are needed for the application to start working. So let me, I'm just trying to get this application working so that I can simultaneously show you how it looks. Looks like there's some okay. So and also the one major advantage that we have here is it, like I said, it helps us to track the progress. Assuming all of us are working in it, and there's a manager who's created this project, and he's assigning certain tasks. Maybe he's assigned payables to me, and some other module across to you, people, and one to Ramki, and one to Jimmy. So each of us is responsible. We are responsible for our own modules, and these sub tasks that are there in this module, we don't really have to have them in an Excel to track. Instead, we have all these modules listed down under there, and that would help us track the progress and also ensure that we are completing each of these tasks. So once it is complete, it says all of these tasks are complete. And it also helps us to move between instances. Like it's a practice. It's a common practice when I'm sure you must have also done this. You've configured the system, and after a point in time, you have said that, okay, I've got all the all the things sorted out, and this is the final configuration that I would want to proceed, and this is good. So usually when we have that date approaching, what we try to do is we try to back up all the setups and then get a clean instance cloned, and from here forward we would want to ensure that we are not using dummy names, right? Like there are many times we create -dummy or -1 test for some of the organizations or for some of the setups that we do. We don't have to really do that when we clone the instance. Usually we do this before we go in. We are heading into the UAT season. We try to clear up all the configuration, and once we know that it is all good, we try to remove those prefixes or postfixes and then go with the standard naming convention that we have already decided. So in that case, we got all these things done, and then we would want to back up this clean configuration so that when we are moving to the next instance, that is when we are moving, if you have one more instance, say a UAT instance, maybe you would want to copy all the setups into UAT instance rather than redoing up all the steps manually. You could do that, and once UAT is clear, then you could also use, in case there are no changes and you would want to move them directly to production, then you could even do that. So I'm sure you already are aware of this, but it's just that we're covering and ensuring that it is all in place. So these talk about the same thing, the features that we just discussed. Like I said, it would help us to configure all the tasks. All the tasks that you check here are available for configuration through the opt-ins and the features when you use those features. And if there is there are certain features you can turn off at a later point in time, or you want to turn in, but once you start using them, usually turning off doesn't happen, as you know that we don't turn it off unless and until we are trying to deprecate something and say that, okay, no longer we're going to use this feature. All right, so this is again talking a little more in terms of that. And usually the PSL, the FSM, it comes, the application implementation user by default comes with this. I mean, whatever is the user that you're primarily getting and you use for setting up, that user already has this role that is needed.